In this life, people will turn their backs on you the moment you fall, but what they never realize is that failure doesn't destroy you, it shapes you. My name is James, and this is my story. I grew up in a proud family, one that valued success above all else. My father was a businessman, sharp, strict, respected by everyone in our town. My mother was graceful, always hosting family events, always reminding me that appearances mattered. I was the youngest of three. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child, straight A's, big job, married early. My sister, Olivia, was a lawyer, sharp as a blade, always winning arguments at the dinner table. Then there was me, the dreamer, the one who never seemed to fit the mold. While they studied finance and law, I wanted to create, to build something of my own. I didn't want to wear a suit and pretend to be someone I wasn't. But in my family, that was the first sign of failure. My father used to say, "Dreams don't feed anyone, James. Hard work does," and I used to tell him, "But what if my dream is the work?" He'd shake his head and say, "You'll understand when you're hungry." When I turned 24, I quit my job at a small accounting firm. I told my parents I was going to start my own production company, small video projects, documentaries, anything creative. My mom smiled weakly, but my dad's face turned cold. He said, "You're throwing your life away." I said, "No, I'm finally starting it." That night, my father told me not to come home until I could show him a real paycheck. I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. The next week, when I visited, my things were packed in boxes. My brother helped me carry them out silently, avoiding my eyes. My mother stood by the doorway, tears in her eyes, whispering, "Please, just do what your father wants." I walked away that night with everything I owned in 2 bags and a heart full of pain. For months, I struggled. I slept on a friend's couch, then in my car when money ran out. I filmed weddings, birthdays, small ads for local stores, anything that paid enough for gas and food. Some nights, I'd drive past my parents' house, the lights glowing warmly through the windows, and I'd just sit there in the car, invisible. I wanted to knock, to tell them I was trying, but my pride kept me still. One evening, I called my father. He didn't answer. I texted, "Dad, I'm okay. I just wanted to say hi." He never replied. 2 years passed. I had barely enough to survive, but my passion never died. Then one day, I got an unexpected call from a small documentary company that had seen one of my videos online. They said, "We loved your eye for storytelling. Would you be open to joining a project?" I said yes immediately, without even asking what it was about. The project turned out to be about people living on the streets, their resilience, their forgotten dreams. I spent months filming real stories, sleeping outside to understand their world. I didn't realize it then, but that documentary would change my life forever. When it was finally released, it went viral. People connected deeply with it. It wasn't about fame, it was about truth, about showing that every person has a story that matters. The production company submitted it to a national TV network, and one Sunday night, I sat in a small apartment, watching my name appear on the screen, directed by James Cole. My hands shook. I cried silently. It wasn't the money or fame that hit me. It was knowing I had created something meaningful. But then, something happened I never expected. My phone started buzzing nonstop. Unknown numbers, messages, emails. Then one name appeared that made my breath catch, Mom. I stared at it, frozen, before answering. Her voice trembled. "James, we just saw you on TV. Your father is here too. We were proud of you." I didn't say anything at first. For years, I'd imagined this moment. The day they'd see me, the day they'd finally understand. She said, "Your father wants to speak to you." There was silence. Then his voice came on, older, softer. "Son, I was wrong. I shouldn't have pushed you away. You made something beautiful." I closed my eyes, my throat tight. All I could say was, "I didn't do it to prove you wrong, Dad. I did it to prove I was enough." He said, "You always were, James. I just couldn't see it." That moment healed something inside me I didn't even realize was still broken. We talked for hours that night, not as father and son in conflict, but as 2 men finally understanding each other. But the real twist came a few weeks later when the TV network reached out again. They said a large foundation wanted to fund a new project with me as lead director, a nationwide campaign about family reconciliation. I smiled, knowing exactly who I wanted to feature first. The first scene I filmed was of my parents sitting on our old living room couch, holding hands, talking about forgiveness. My father looked at the camera and said, "Sometimes love hides behind pride, but it's still there, waiting to be seen." When the new documentary aired, I didn't just see my face on TV, I saw my family's too. And that was the real victory. After the documentary aired, everything changed almost overnight. My inbox filled with interview requests, invitations, even sponsorship deals. People started recognizing me on the street, not as a celebrity, but as the guy who told stories that made them feel something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. My parents invited me home for dinner a week later. It had been 5 years since I'd sat at that table. When I walked through the door, the house smelled the same. That mix of rosemary and coffee my mother loved. She ran to hug me, whispering, "Welcome home, James." My father stood by the table, looking smaller somehow, softer. He said quietly, "I wasn't sure you'd come." I said, "I almost didn't." He nodded, "But you did, and that means everything." We ate, we talked, we laughed cautiously, like people learning each other again. It felt good, but it also felt strange, like time had stretched and we were trying to catch up with it. After dinner, my father asked me to walk with him to the backyard. The night air was cool, the crickets loud. He said, "I saw the way you looked at me on TV, that mix of pride and distance. You were right to feel that way." I said, "Dad, we can't rewrite the past." He said, "No, but we can understand it." Then he took a deep breath and said something I never expected. "When I was your age, I tried to be an artist too." I blinked. "What?" He smiled faintly. "I wanted to paint. I had sketches, canvases, ideas. But your grandfather, he didn't believe in that. He said art was weakness, so I buried it. I became what he wanted instead. I guess I punished you for chasing the dream I couldn't." His voice cracked on that last line. For the first time, I saw not the strict man I grew up fearing, but a young dreamer who'd been crushed by expectation. I said softly, "You could still paint, you know." He laughed sadly. "Old hands, stiff wrists, too late." I said, "Maybe not. Maybe you just need a reason." The next week, I brought him a small canvas and some brushes. He hesitated at first, but then he started painting again, slowly, awkwardly, then passionately, like he'd never stopped. My mother would stand behind him, smiling, her eyes full of peace I hadn't seen in years. Something beautiful happened in that house. It wasn't just reunion, it was resurrection. Months later, the network invited us back for a follow-up interview. They wanted to show how the film had changed not just audiences, but also my own family. During the live segment, the host asked my father, "Mr. Cole, how does it feel seeing your son's success after calling him a failure?" My father paused, looked straight into the camera, and said, "It feels like grace. Sometimes we fail our children, but if we're lucky, they forgive us before it's too late." The studio went silent, then applause filled the room. I turned to him, eyes wet, and said, "I already did, Dad." But the twist, the part no one saw coming, arrived a few months later. I got a call from a lawyer representing a company I had worked with early in my career. He said, "James, do you remember a project proposal you submitted years ago that got rejected?" I laughed. Of course, I had dozens of those. He said, "Well, one of them was picked up later under a different name, and it seems they used your original concept without permission. Now that you're in the spotlight, someone noticed and traced it back to you." My heart pounded. I had been copied, stolen from. The lawyer said, "We can file for credit and compensation. It could be worth a lot." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about how the world had once called me a failure, and now it was trying to make up for it with money and recognition. The next morning, I went to my father. I told him everything. He listened quietly and then said something I'll never forget. "Son, you already won. Don't let greed rewrite your victory." I asked, "So you think I should just let it go?" He said, "No, I think you should choose peace over revenge. The man I disowned would have chased validation. The man you've become doesn't need it." Those words hit me hard. I decided not to sue. Instead, I shared the story publicly. How even being stolen from was part of my journey. Proof that my ideas had value even before the world noticed me. The post went viral again, and that single act of humility opened doors I could never have imagined. Companies started reaching out not just for my films, but for mentorship programs, creative workshops, youth projects. I wasn't just a storyteller anymore. I was a bridge for others like me, People told they'd never make it. My father came to one of my talks. He sat in the front row, quietly sketching me as I spoke. When I asked him afterward why, he said, "Because I finally see the art in you that I lost in myself." I hugged him tightly. That was the real ending. Not fame, not TV, not success. It was family restored, pride turned into love, and pain turned into purpose. And the biggest twist of all, the man the world once called a failure had become the face of resilience. Because the moment my family saw me on TV wasn't the moment I won. It was the moment they finally saw me for who I had always been.